Alrighty, what's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to the channel for another market update. Hope everybody had a lovely day. And with that being said, get into the TA. All right, we are going to be keeping today's video pretty short. We're just going to go over the indices here and the Mag 7 stocks. And yeah, we're going to do our best here to keep this bad boy under, we're going to shoot for 7 to 8 minutes here, guys. All right, so first thing I want to point out, buy. You sold off right over here around the 200 daily moving average here. QQ, you have the same thing. You didn't, quite test it there, but it is, just above us there. You got pretty close to it. We're really going to have to see what happens the next few trading sessions. Either this is going to end up, this move. We could, for all we know, we could go down lower tomorrow, reverse, put in a reversal candlestick, and then with PC on Friday, gap up and start taking out this high. It doesn't even have to happen all in this week, but, we could put in a higher low here and then take out this high, and then we know it's the higher low, and then we continue on up here. We don't know, all right? Or the other scenario is you just keep falling down here, all right, and you take out 472.41 down here, and at that point, you're going to take out the low, put in a new one. You're probably coming down to 460 over here on the Qs. We don't know which scenario we're going to get here. I'm just going to say we have PC on Friday. It's going to be one or the other. But with how things are looking right now, with how NVDA is looking right now, I would not be surprised if we came down to a new low. But if we do come down to a new low, we already talked about this, and I think we talked about in the weekly update there. If we were to just pop down to a new low, we're going to be putting in a major bottom here. We're going to have a lot of, bullish divergence here on the daily time frame, including on these indices here. If we take out these lows, you're going to be revisiting oversold territory, with a couple weeks here apart. All right. Like, just 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks apart there. Well, we've seen this before, and you don't typically stay down there when that happens. Instead, if you put in these divergences here, okay, you put in something like that, like we could just, go lower for one day and then boom, snap back up real quick. We could get some action that drives everyone nuts again. We could get that. We're in the Trump market. Keep that in mind. But, we're probably not going to spend too much time down there. And then we're going to be snapping back up. And then, we talked about the scenario where we can take the next month even to build out a big old base to then reverse off of. You're probably going to, if you take out this low, you're going to get everyone bearish again. We've already established we're not having like a market crash right now. This is a controlled sell-off. And the only thing that, came out of today is, from what I saw, you have more tariff talk. Okay. Tariffs are coming back out and about. Go follow me on Twitter. If I see, important news, I will be, retweeting that and stuff like that. So everybody can know about it. If it's a news event that I think is going to be moving the market, I will retweet it and you will get a notification on that if you have notifications turned on. But there are also a bunch of other like news outlets over there. And yeah, I mean, every time the guy wants to talk about new tariffs or, just even bring up tariffs in the news, which is funny. I'm just saying it's very funny that, he went silent for, a few days to a week here as almost everything came back to the 21 EMA here. Reversion to the mean, guys, at its finest. All right. You got NVDA. All right. That dance around it's 21. You have Apple coming up to a T to the 21. You have Microsoft coming up to the 21. You have Google coming up to the 21. All right. You had Amazon coming up to the 21. They all just came back, reverted to the mean here, and now you're losing them. We're going to have to see how all of these goes, but it's even the same over here on the indices. All right. So let's just finish up with QQ over here. We'll come down to the hourly time frame, guys. Take out 482.82, today's low, and you have 479.74, 476.28, 472.41, and then 467.01. Underneath that, 460. On the upside, you have 485.84, 489.02. Get back above there. You're above the hourly, short-term moving averages here. Chances are you're going to come back up and take out this high. You're going to test that 200 DMA at 494.49. And that's the scenario we were just talking about, how, this would just be a higher low into another higher high. And at that point, we're probably going to have a bigger push here, which, we know that is a scenario. You're either going to get sellers stepping up in this area or it's going to be right up here around 511.05. All right, so that's QQQ. We're going to come over here to SPY. We'll just come down to the hourly time frame, go over some levels here. You do still have this, giant bear flag looking structure here. On the upside, you have 569.71, 572.25, 573.69, and then 576.41. On the downside is support. Today's low, 567.19. Underneath there, 564.02. You really want to hold there, right? Because then, you're starting to break down from this bear structure here. 564.02, a break of that can bring you down here. You lose that, you're probably just coming straight back down to the lows. I know you got this level in between there, but break under 564.02, bad things start to happen. Then you have 559.11, 554.87, and 549.15. You want to hold here. You don't want to come back down here. You're going to be making new lows. And, that's just, that's where you would want to defend over here. This is the level where it starts getting bad. If you can get back to the upside and prove that this was the bear trap, kind of higher low situation we talked about, then hey, all right, you're probably still going to make up to, either 580. We still didn't get up there, 580.91 or 590.49. All right. I would say QQ has the cleaner price action. That is personally, what I follow closely. And, I'm just putting it out there. We're really just going to have to see. For all we know, like, we could just pull back here. This structure we have right now, it can go either way. That's what I'm getting at. You're selling from the perfect spot. We don't know if you're just going to slice through all of this crap right here and then resume, the aggressive selling. We don't know, but it can come. And we're going to point out what to watch right here. Okay, so VIX, I pointed out in yesterday's video, it doesn't always mean you're about to get a bounce, but it does tell us over here if you're just sitting in oversold territory here on the 4-hour time frame, over here on the RSI, that is typically where we start getting these bounces back from. Okay, you don't spend too much time down here. Max, you're spending like a week over there, and at that point you get the big old bounce. You put in the divergence, and there's that. But I will just point out over here, you keep rejecting the 21, the short-term moving average over here on the 4-hour time frame. Look where you sold from today, rejected today. If it can get above 1950, we can see on the daily time frame, that's an important spot here. If it gets back above there, all right, this thing is probably going to get a larger bounce here. And that, might align with the scenario where indices do make a new low. If it reclaims these daily moving averages right here, okay, like, 1950, that's going to be a big spot. Get above there. Then we're watching like 21. If it gets above 21, it's clip. All right. From that point, it's probably going to, start spiking over here. It's clipped for the bulls over there. It's probably, going to start spiking again. And then maybe we get an actual spike. Maybe, again, like if we're putting in a major bottom, we could actually have a fear event, not this slow build here. That's why I'd say, like, we're definitely not crashing. VIX doesn't just slowly build on it like that. You're typically going to get these impulsive spikes, then it consolidates, and then another impulsive spike. We didn't get that. We just kept building on top of it every other day. Just like over there in the indices, you get a pretty convincing look at bounce, boom, next they take out the low. We had like, 5 of them. That's just how it has been. All right, so that's what you're watching over there on VIX. IWM, no exception. You just, sold off from the 21 over here. You could not get above 208.84. Kept rejecting it 3 days in a row. And, everything's kind of consolidating around these short-term moving averages. So we're about to lose them again, or we're going to get these bounces right from where we are. We're going to have to see. But, I also will just say, everything really has this kind of, bearish structure to it right now. And that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. I don't know if you guys can see that. I got the dotted line on there. All right. But DIA has kind of a very similar look here, where it's looking kind of, wedgy to me. It's looking kind of like a rising wedge or a bear flag, one could say. Okay. So there's that. Now, coming over here to the Mag 7 stocks, we're already at a 9-minute video. We're shooting for the 7-8-minute video. Let's run through these pretty quick over here. Tesla, guys, big spot to watch. There's just going to be 250 down here. If you can hold 250, 251.84, then it's not so bad. But if you lose there, you're probably making a new low, and you're going to come down to 202.59 to 212.11. We're going to have to see how that all plays out. It rejected right from the 200 daily moving average right there. We're going to see if you can take out that 288.20 high. Then 299.29, and then you're probably making all the way up to 326.59. But you're right here on 271 support, underneath there 251.84. Meta over here, guys. I would argue this is still the best Mag 7. I'd say this still has the most potential. You had Microsoft all coiled up over here, but the market's going to sell. Then Microsoft, it's also in that bear flag like structure, just along with so many other tickers we're looking at here. All right, so everything's going to be moving together over here. Meta, all right, you're right here on the daily 9. You're right there on 608.86 support. Lose that 598, and underneath there you see 580 down there, and then you have the 200 that wasn't tested before. We're probably going to undercut these lows here, sweep them, come back above, reclaim that 580 level, and then maybe we hit it with like an ugly double bottom from down there, and then we get back up here, and then we can have a larger move. But I would say on the dip over here, you played this, congrats, take it off. All right, and you might be about to get that exact same opportunity from the same price you bought those at. So that's just my thoughts over here on Meta. On the upside, 620.50, and above there 632.10 and 638.40. Expect sellers, just like came over here. Microsoft still has that little bear flag, just like kind of everything else we're looking at here. If the market starts breaking down, it's going to be breaking down. Support over here, guys. What are you watching? 387.92, 384.64, 381.10, 376.91. If it gets above 391.79, watch for it to break back above. Hang on, let's take that off. We're going to adjust that. 396.36. Then you have 400 up there. But honestly, guys, it doesn't really matter how good this chart looks right here. If the market is going to come down over there, you very clearly could see this isn't impulsive buying going on over here. It's not like that. This is controlled, stair step up. You look like you could be about to take the elevator down. So, everything's going to be moving down, and it really is all going to be following the big guy in the video over here, guys. So underneath 113.22, I know you look like you're holding it. All right, you're bouncing over there on the daily time frame, but bam, you already lost it here in the after hours. I will point out the 4-hour RSI. This is with extended trading hours on. It is already just about oversold, but with how this thing is looking, I don't think it's just gonna get bought up right away over here. It's probably gonna test 110.11 at least. Probably is gonna undercut that right there. And then if it does lose the 0.786 Fibonacci retracement over here, 108.50, if it gets over under 108.50, it's probably coming down to new lows. So that's really how it is over here. And if you see it down here, it's probably not going much lower. And I'll just point out, like, people think a big bear market is going to be starting up over here. We're getting like a great reset while everybody is thinking the great reset is happening. I'm not saying like a great reset, like, the thing where the whole system's wiped and stuff like that. But I'm talking about, everyone thinking like a bear market starting up here. Well, I'll tell you over here in 2022, things going to happen slowly over here. You didn't just get down into oversold territory on the weekly time frame this quick. Like, I pointed this out not too long ago. Microsoft's RSI over here, if you do end up selling all the way down to a new leg lower, you're going to have this thing down in the same spot where you just have these big bounces coming up here, and you just chilled around here. You didn't go much lower from there, and the worst of it was over by then. So I don't think, I just don't think this thing is going to be as bad as people are thinking here. I think we're probably seeing the front end of it, the worst of it in the front, and that's kind of how I think things are setting up. And that's why I said we can take like a month here, with a basing process. That's like on the indices here. That's definitely one of these scenarios here, where, maybe it goes like that, and then, like some sort of structure can easily build out here. I don't think it's just going to be like one of these where you shoot back up here. But I also, I don't think it's going to be something crazy like people are expecting. All right. I don't think we're going to come back down to 500 over here on SPY. I think it would much more likely, be something like this. I don't know. I'm just saying, if you make this new low, like across the board, you're not going to get much more downside. You're probably going to get what you did over here, whereas if you reach oversold territory, the worst of it's completely over, and then you trade flat for the next 4 days. and you marginally make new lows, but you're going to drive everyone nuts. But that's probably how it's going to be. So you see this thing, get back down to new lows. Daily RSI is already going to be down here. You're going to have the bullish divergence at that point. It's the worst of it's over. So that's just the thought process. But there's that. That is over there. Let's make it back over here to Apple. All right, guys. Apple rejected the 21 right there at 224.22 resistance. And then we'll just come down to the hourly time frame. All right, underneath 221.03, you have 218.76 and then 215.22. You don't want to make it back down there at that point. It's looking like a lot of those other charts I just showed you. If you make it past a certain point, you're probably just going to make a new low. And, that's just going to be that. But if it happens, you're going to have that bullish divergence sitting down there, right? But this is the perfect spot for sellers to start stepping in here, right at the 21 EMAs. You never expect price to just get past these short-term moving averages, because even if they do get right past it, just like, something like over here, you get past it, you're going to grind or you're going to come back to retest them. And it's just typically how these things go. And, as we see, we're getting a bunch of rejections across the board. Come over here to Amazon. I do just want to say over here, you're retesting that 2-1 big spot there, but you already lost it here in the after hours. All right. So, for all we know, this thing is going to be selling with the market over here. You're at the big spot, so you want buyers to step in here, but at the same time, if the overall market is going to sell, this thing's going to sell with it, and you're going to be coming back down here. Let's see if it can show, more strength than everything else. Same situation, come down to lows, probably going to have a bullish divergence in down there, but underneath 201.20, you got this spot over here you could be paying attention to. Get over here on the hourly time frame. Take that off right there. All right, but underneath 199-ish right there, you have nothing till 195.75 and then 190.88 underneath there. All right, so that is Amazon. And I think we did not go over Google over here. If buyers are going to be stepping in here, it's going to be right here in this green little green circle in between 165.57 and 163.24. You can't hold here. Probably going to start heading back down to lows. Reclaim 168.46, and then you got 170.45, 172.51, and then at that point you're coming up to test that 200 on 176.90. All right, but 163, this is going to be your big spot to hold right here. If you cannot hold right here, probably coming back down to lows, and then you're hitting that 156.60 level. Everything's looking pretty hairy, and I'm serious, guys. It probably is just going to fall in the video, and I know this thing is already oversold here on the hourly time frame. I understand that, but we could also just get these dead cat bounces. All right, maybe you hit it right here and then you sell from there. Not really sure, but you could just look on this weekly candle chart over here, guys. This is looking pretty ugly. This is literally looking like, this was all she wrote for the bounce. And you very well could be coming back down to see this daily RSI get back down to the spot here where we've been seeing a bounce for a very long time. We'll just make that red. I don't like the white there. All right. But you come down to 36, 37 on the daily RSI, you get a bounce every single time. So, I don't think you're getting much downside here. Once you hit that spot, it's probably going to be, you're going to start getting these bounces here, like pretty aggressive. They don't want this thing to just hit oversold territory. They were that's what I'm saying. It's not a crash. They were controlling things. The NASDAQ McClellan oscillator, it just wasn't getting, drastically oversold because of what they were doing. They kept bouncing it every other day. So, I don't know if we're about to get a market like that. I don't think we are, though. I think, if we're going to sell, we're going to sell. I don't think we have this crazy back and forth action. But once this thing gets back down here, guys, that's the crazy back and forth action that's going to happen. So you're going to have those opportunities to play that 5 to 10% intraday bounce over here on your boy NVDA. But you're also going to get the volatility going on over here. My point is NVIDIA is going to lead the market. So you're going to get some trade opportunities over here no matter what, good or bad over here. If you're selling, if you're buying over here, you're going to get the volatility on the stock. So it's definitely something you should just be keeping your eye on. It's going to move in the market. All right, guys, with that being said, I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And with that being said, I will catch y'all in the next one. It is not a 7 to 8 minute video, but it is a 19-minute video, so not so bad. And yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.